Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive, this time into the world of home monitoring and cardiology. I know you're as curious as I am about how tech is really shaking things up in healthcare. And cardiology is really leading the charge of this whole revolution. Today we're diving into a blog post by Dr. Edward Latham. He's a top cardiologist in the UK, and he gives this really clear picture of how home monitoring is changing the game, not just for doctors, but for patients too. So buckle up, because things are about to get interesting.
It is really fascinating to see how the pandemic sort of forced everyone to take a closer look at what was already starting to happen. Before COVID-19 even came along, cardiologists were already dealing with this huge increase in patients, especially those with chronic conditions, like hypertension or heart failure. And the old way of doing things, those outpatient appointments with all the waiting and scheduling hassles, it was becoming clear that it just wasn't going to cut it anymore.
Yeah, it's like trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Dr. Latham even mentions how those appointments could take weeks or even months to schedule. Talk about frustrating for everyone involved.
Totally. And then the pandemic hit. And suddenly, face-to-face appointments became a risk, especially for people with heart conditions. So remote monitoring went from being a convenience to being a necessity. It was a lifeline for a lot of people, and it really showed everyone what was possible.
So how did this remote monitoring thing even get started? Dr. Latham talks about these implantable loop recorders, like the Reveal LINQ, which is this tiny little device. That can monitor your heart rhythm for years. It's amazing to me that something so small can have such a big impact.
It really is. It's like if you're trying to catch this rare butterfly that only appears every once in a while, traditional Holter monitors, the ones you wear for a day or two, those are like trying to catch that butterfly with a tiny net for just a short amount of time. You might get lucky, but chances are you'll miss it. But an implantable monitor is like setting up this permanent invisible net. It's always there on the lookout 24/7, so it increases the chances of catching those tricky arrhythmias, the ones that might have slipped through the cracks otherwise.
It's like having a bodyguard for your heart all the time. But it's not just about monitoring. Dr. Latham also talks about other implantable devices, like ICDs and CRT pacemakers, which not only help regulate the heart rhythm, but can also detect early warning signs of trouble.
Oh, absolutely. Think of them like smoke detectors for your heart. They pick up on these subtle changes that could indicate a problem. And that gives doctors a chance to intervene before things get really bad. It's like stopping a small fire from turning into a massive inferno.
Okay, so we've got these implantable devices, which are incredible in their own right. But then there's this whole explosion of wearable technology. Fitness trackers, smartwatches, even things as simple as home blood pressure monitors. We're practically swimming in data these days. What do we even do with all of it?
Right, that's the million-dollar question. It's a blessing and a curse, All this data can be incredibly powerful, but we have to be smart about how we use it. We have to remember that consumer-grade wearables, they're not always as accurate or reliable as medical-grade devices.
Like take-home blood pressure monitors, for example. Dr. Latham talks about how valuable they can be for getting a more accurate picture of someone's blood pressure, especially compared to those dreaded white coat hypertension readings you get at the doctor's office.
Right, exactly. If you only check your blood pressure once in a blue moon at the doctor's office, you might get a reading that's higher than usual just because you're nervous. But home monitoring lets you track those ups and downs throughout the day, and that gives you and your doctor a much better understanding of what's really going on. And we're even starting to see some really cool new technologies, like the Actia monitor, which can track blood pressure continuously without needing an inflatable cuff. It's a game changer for managing hypertension.
So we've got blood pressure covered. What about all these home ECG monitors that are popping up everywhere? It seems like every smartwatch and fitness tracker claims to be able to record an ECG these days.
Yeah, they do. And while those single-lead ECGs can be really helpful for a quick snapshot and can be really useful for initial screening, it's important to keep in mind that they don't capture the same level of detail as a traditional 12-lead ECG, the kind you would get in a clinic. It's like getting a sneak peek versus watching the whole movie.
Okay, so don't cancel those doctor's appointments just yet. But this next one really caught me off guard. Dr. Latham mentions using continuous glucose monitors, or CGMs, in cardiology. I always thought those were just for diabetes.
A lot of people think that. But it turns out that those fluctuations in blood sugar can have a big impact on heart health, even if you don't have diabetes. CGMs can give us really valuable information about how someone's glucose levels respond to things like food medication and activity. It's another piece of the puzzle when it comes to managing their heart health.
It's interesting how all these seemingly separate pieces of health data are actually connected. But with all this information coming in from implantables, wearables, and home monitors, it seems like it could get pretty overwhelming for both patients and doctors. How do we make sense of it all?
Well, that's the challenge, isn't it? We're practically drowning in data. But don't worry, technology can help us out here too. One solution is to use automated filters and trend analyses. So instead of staring at every single data point, we can have a system that only highlights the readings that need a doctor's attention. It's like having a personal assistant who sorts through all the noise and only brings you the important messages.
That sounds incredibly helpful for busy doctors.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing artificial intelligence has a role to play in all of this too.
Oh, absolutely. AI is becoming more and more sophisticated, especially when it comes to analyzing huge amounts of data and finding those subtle patterns, the kind that humans might miss. Imagine an AI-powered ECG monitoring system. It could analyze a patient's recordings over a whole day and only flag the small percentage that show concerning patterns. That would save doctors a ton of time and make sure that nothing important gets missed.
It's like having another set of eyes on the lookout for trouble. And it's not just about catching problems early. Dr. Leatham also talks about how home monitoring can empower patients. It allows them to be active participants in managing their own health, rather than just passively receiving care.
Yeah, that's one of the things I find most exciting about this shift towards home monitoring. Take someone with heart failure, for example. By monitoring their weight every day, they can spot those early signs of fluid retention, and they can adjust their diuretic medication as needed. It's all about giving people the tools and knowledge they need to be in control of their own health journey.
It sounds like a win-win for everyone. But are there any potential downsides? Could all this data end up overwhelming patients, or making them anxious about every little fluctuation?
That's a really important point. Too much information can be just as bad as not enough. So we need to find the right balance. The goal is to provide actionable insights, not just a constant stream of numbers. And that's where the role of healthcare professionals is so important. They're there to guide, interpret, and reassure, to make sure that patients feel empowered, not overwhelmed.
So it's not just about the technology, it's about the human connection and the trust between patient and doctor. That makes sense. But Dr. Leatham also mentioned some logistical challenges, especially when it comes to data integration. It seems like we have all these different devices and platforms operating in silos.
That's exactly right. It's like trying to put together a puzzle where all the pieces are scattered everywhere. You might have your blood pressure data in one app, your ECG readings in another, and your weight tracking in a third. It's a recipe for confusion for both patients and clinicians.
So what's the solution to this data fragmentation problem? Is there a way to bring all of this information together in a meaningful way? I think this is where that unified platform concept comes in that Dr. Leatham talks about.
You got it. The ideal solution would be a platform that can pull data from all these different sources and display it in a way that's clear and easy to understand. But it can't just be a data dumping ground. Imagine a platform that's actually intelligent, with AI algorithms that can analyze the data and point out any concerning trends. And it should be a two-way street, allowing doctors to set alerts and communicate with patients seamlessly.
That sounds incredibly powerful, like a central command center for your health. Let's be realistic for a second. A platform like that sounds expensive. Who's going to pay for all this?
That's the big question, isn't it? In the UK, the NHS is still catching up when it comes to funding remote monitoring. But I think Dr. Leatham makes a good point about the potential cost savings down the line.
I know it seems counterintuitive. How can investing in all this technology save money in the long run?
Well, if you think about it, preventing even a small number of those expensive hospital admissions can make a huge difference. And that's not even considering the reduced burden on outpatient clinics, the fewer emergency room visits, and the better management of chronic conditions, which can often prevent those costly complications later on.
So it's not just about saving money, it's about spending it smarter. Shifting from reactive care to proactive care, from treating illness to preventing it.
That's the whole idea. And as technology gets even better and those devices and platforms become more affordable, the financial argument for home monitoring is only going to get stronger.
It's a win-win for everyone. Patients get better care, healthcare systems save money, and we all benefit from a healthier population. But even with all these potential benefits, it seems like there are still some hurdles to overcome. What are some of the biggest challenges standing in the way of widespread adoption of home monitoring?
Well, besides the funding issues, which we've already talked about, one of the biggest challenges is data security and privacy. With all this sensitive health information being transmitted electronically, we need to make absolutely sure it's protected from unauthorized access.
That's a really important point. We can't let worries about data breaches undermine the potential of this incredible technology. So what can be done to make sure that patient data stays safe and secure?
That's where really strong cybersecurity measures and strict data protection regulations come in. We need to have multiple layers of protection in place, like encryption firewalls and multi-factor authentication. And we need clear policies and procedures for how data is accessed, used, and shared.
It sounds like building a system that's both powerful and secure is a huge undertaking. But it seems like it's absolutely essential if we want to unlock the full potential of home monitoring and personalized healthcare.
It is a challenge, but it's one that's worth taking on. The stakes are simply too high to ignore. We're talking about the future of healthcare. And I believe that a unified platform designed with security and privacy as top priorities is a crucial step in the right direction.
So we've laid out this vision of a unified platform that brings together all this incredible data from home monitoring devices, analyzes it with AI, and empowers both patients and doctors to make better decisions. It all sounds incredibly promising. But I'm curious, what would this look like in real life? Can you give us a concrete example of how this would work for a typical patient?
Sure, let's imagine a 65-year-old patient with hypertension, mild heart failure, and prediabetes. In the traditional model, this patient might be going to appointments with multiple specialists and managing each condition separately. But in Dr. Letham's model, this patient would have a whole set of home monitoring devices, like a continuous blood pressure monitor, a Wi-Fi scale, a single lead ECG device, and a continuous glucose monitor.
So all those devices we talked about earlier, all feeding data into that central platform. Starting to see how this all fits together.
Exactly. And this platform would be monitored not just by the patient's primary care doctor, but by a whole team of specialists, a cardiologist, an endocrinologist, maybe even a pharmacist. They would have a complete picture of the patient's health all in one place.
So instead of treating each condition in isolation, they could see how they all interact and make more informed decisions. It's like the old saying, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. And if the patient's blood pressure starts to go up, or their weight fluctuates a lot, or their blood sugar spikes, the system can flag it right away, and the team can intervene before it becomes a serious problem.
It's like having a virtual safety net to catch those little stumbles before they turn into big falls. It sounds like it could really make a difference in preventing those expensive and disruptive hospital admissions.
It could, and it's not just about preventing crises, it's also about empowering patients to take an active role in their own care. Imagine getting personalized feedback and guidance based on your real-time data. It's like having a personal health coach right there in your pocket, guiding you every step of the way.
This is all pretty amazing. But how far off is all this? Is this something we can expect to see in the next few years, or is it still way out in the future?
Well, some parts of this vision are already starting to happen. We're seeing more and more home monitoring devices coming out, and the development of AI-powered platforms is moving really quickly.
So it's not a matter of if anymore, it's a matter of when.
Exactly. And as we move forward, I think the biggest challenge will be making sure that these technologies are integrated smoothly into our current healthcare systems and that they're accessible to everyone, no matter their income or how comfortable they are with technology.
That's a really important point. We can't let this become something that's only available to people who can afford it. It has to be a fundamental part of how we provide healthcare for everyone. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, and I'm honestly even more excited about the potential of home monitoring than I was before. It really does feel like we're on the brink of a healthcare revolution. But before we get too carried away, let's shift gears a bit in the final part of our deep dive and take a closer look at what Dr. Latham calls the business case for home monitoring. We'll explore how this move towards proactive personalized care can not only improve health outcomes, but also make healthcare more sustainable and efficient for everyone. Stay tuned. So we talked about all these pieces, all these incredible advances, but I keep thinking about the bigger picture. Dr. Latham keeps bringing up this idea of a unified platform, a place where all this data can actually come together and make sense. It seems like that's the key to really unlocking the potential of home monitoring, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's something I've been thinking a lot about, too. Right now, it's all a bit piecemeal, isn't it? You've got your blood pressure readings in one app, your ECG in another, maybe your weight tracking somewhere else entirely. No wonder people feel overwhelmed trying to keep track of it all.
Exactly. And not just patients. Can you imagine being a doctor and trying to make sense of all that data scattered across different systems? It just seems so inefficient. And like there's a real risk of missing something important.
You're right. It's a real concern. That's why this idea of a unified platform that Dr. Latham talks about is so powerful. He's talking about a system that pulls in all those key metrics: blood pressure, glucose, heart rate, ECG, weight, you name it. and presents it in a way that's both comprehensive and easy to understand.
It's like having a dashboard for your health. Everything you need to know, all laid out in a clear and concise way. But he doesn't just stop there, does he? He talks about this platform being intelligent, which I'm guessing means it's more than just pretty graphs and charts.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just about collecting data, it's about actually making that data meaningful and actionable. And that's where AI comes in. Imagine algorithms that can analyze trends, pick up on subtle changes, and flag potential problems before they even become apparent to the human eye.
So instead of waiting for patients to interpret their own data or schedule an appointment, the platform could act as an early warning system, alerting both the patient and the doctor to anything that needs attention.
That's right. It's all about shifting from reactive care to proactive care, catching those little problems before they turn into big ones. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, empowering patients.
Oh, right. So instead of just feeling bombarded by data, patients would actually get targeted insights and guidance. They'd understand what the data means and what they can do about it.
Exactly. It becomes a tool for self-management and shared decision-making. And it's not just about alerts either. Dr. Leatham talks about the platform being bidirectional, meaning it's not just a one-way flow of information from the patient to the doctor.
Well, what does that look like in practice?
Well, imagine your doctor being able to adjust your medication remotely, or set personalized alert thresholds based on your individual needs, or even send you educational materials that are specifically relevant to your condition. It's about creating a truly personalized and interactive healthcare experience.
It sounds incredible, like something out of science fiction, but it's starting to feel like it could actually become a reality.
It really is amazing, isn't it? And the potential benefits are huge. We could see improvements in patient outcomes, reductions in healthcare costs, and patients feeling much more satisfied with their care.
It sounds like everyone wins. But I can't help but think about the elephant in the room. We've already talked about the funding challenges. Building a platform like this is going to require a serious investment. Who's going to pay for it?
That's the million-dollar question. Dr. Leatham acknowledges that funding is a major hurdle, especially in systems like the NHS. But his argument is that in the long run, the cost savings from things like reduced hospital admissions and more efficient care, they'll actually outweigh that initial investment.
You know, it's like that old saying, you have to spend money to make money. But in this case, we're talking about spending money to potentially save lives and improve people's well-being.
Exactly. And it's not just about the financial side of things either. We have to consider the fact that people are increasingly expecting more convenient and personalized healthcare. They're used to managing everything else in their lives through digital platforms, banking, travel, entertainment. Why should healthcare be any different?
Right. It's not just about what's possible. It's about what people want and expect. They want access to their information. They want to be involved in their care. And they want solutions that actually fit into their busy lives.
Exactly. And that's what makes Dr. Letham's vision of this unified platform so compelling. It bridges the gap between what technology can do and what people are actually demanding from their healthcare.
It's a powerful idea.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's people out there who are a little skeptical. What are some of the concerns people might have about putting all this health data in one place?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is definitely data security and privacy. When you have all this sensitive information in one central location, it becomes a bigger target for hackers.
That's a valid concern. We've all heard stories about data breaches, and it would be a disaster if this kind of information fell into the wrong hands. So how do we address that and make sure that people's data is actually protected?
That's where things like robust cybersecurity measures and really strict data governance protocols come in. You need multiple layers of protection, encryption firewalls, multi-factor authentication, and clear policies and procedures for how data is accessed, used, and shared.
Building a system that's both powerful and secure, it sounds like a massive undertaking.
It is, but it's an absolutely essential one. We can't afford to ignore these concerns. We're talking about the future of healthcare here. And I believe that a unified platform built with security and privacy as top priorities is a vital step in the right direction.
So we've talked about this grand vision of a unified platform, pulling in data from home monitoring devices, analyzing it with AI, and empowering both patients and doctors to make better decisions. It all sounds amazing, but I'm still trying to picture what it would look like in a real-world setting.
Okay, let's say we have a 65-year-old patient who has hypertension, mild heart failure, and pre-diabetes. In the traditional system, this patient might be juggling appointments with different specialists, managing each condition as if it were completely separate from the others. But in Dr. Letham's model, this patient would have a set of home monitoring devices, a continuous blood pressure monitor, a Wi-Fi scale, a single LED ECG device, and a continuous glucose monitor.
All those devices we talked about, all feeding into this central platform. I see where you're going with this.
Right, and this platform wouldn't just be monitored by the patient's primary care physician. It would be accessible to a whole team of specialists, a cardiologist, an endocrinologist, maybe even a pharmacist. They'd all have a holistic view of the patient's health in one central location.
So instead of just treating each condition separately, they can see how they all relate to each other and make better, more informed decisions.
Exactly. And if the patient's blood pressure starts creeping up, or their weight fluctuates significantly, or their blood sugar spikes, the system can flag it immediately. And the care team can intervene before it turns into a bigger issue.
It's like a safety net to catch those little slips before they turn into major falls.
That's a great way to put it. And it's not just about preventing those acute situations either. It's also about giving patients the information and support they need to manage their conditions on a day-to-day basis. Imagine getting personalized feedback and guidance in real time. It's like having a health coach right there in your pocket.
This all sounds so futuristic, but also like it's right around the corner.
I think so too. We're already seeing pieces of this vision coming together. More and more home monitoring devices are becoming available, and the development of AI-powered platforms is happening at an incredible pace.
So it really is just a matter of time.
I believe so. And as we move forward, the biggest challenge will be integrating these technologies smoothly into our existing healthcare systems, and making sure they're accessible to everyone regardless of income or technological literacy.
That's an important point. We can't let this become a luxury that's only available to a select few. It needs to be a fundamental part of how we approach healthcare for everyone. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this part of our deep dive, and I'm more convinced than ever that home monitoring has the potential to revolutionize healthcare. But before we get too carried away, let's shift gears in this final part of our deep dives and take a closer look at what Dr. Leatham calls the business case for home monitoring. We'll explore how this shift towards proactive, personalized care can not only improve people's health, but also make healthcare more sustainable and efficient for everyone. Stay tuned. All right, so we've talked about the potential of this whole personalized, proactive, AI-driven approach to healthcare. But let's get down to brass tacks. Dr. Leatham spends a good chunk of his blog post talking about the business case for remote monitoring. What do you think about that? Is this all just a pipe dream, or is there really a solid economic argument to be made for home monitoring?
Oh, it's definitely not just a pipe dream. I think Dr. Leatham makes a really strong case for the financial benefits. And I agree with him. I know it seems counterintuitive at first, like you're spending all this money on technology devices, platforms. You'd think it would make healthcare more expensive, not less.
Right, that's what I thought too. Where exactly are these savings supposed to come from?
Well, the key is in preventing those really big healthcare expenses. Those hospital admissions, they're incredibly expensive. If we can use home monitoring to catch problems early, make medication adjustments, proactively keep people out of the hospital, the potential savings are huge.
So it's like keeping up with those regular car maintenance appointments.
Yeah.
Catching those little issues before they turn into major breakdowns and you end up with a huge repair bill.
Exactly. That's a great analogy. And it's not just about preventing those hospital stays either. There are savings to be found in reducing those outpatient visits, those trips to the emergency room, and managing chronic conditions better so they don't lead to even bigger problems and costs down the line.
So it's not just about saving money, but about using those resources more wisely. Moving from reactive care to proactive care, from treating illness to actually preventing it.
You got it. And as technology keeps advancing and the cost of these devices and platforms goes down, the financial argument for home monitoring is only going to become more and more compelling.
So everyone wins. Patients get better care, the healthcare system is more sustainable, and we all benefit from a healthier population. It's starting to feel like this isn't just the future of cardiology, but the future of healthcare as a whole.
I think you're right. This idea of proactive, personalized care driven by technology and data, it really has the potential to change how we think about health and well-being across the board.
It's a really exciting time to be a part of this shift. Dr. Leatham ends his blog post on a really positive note. He says home monitoring has moved beyond a fleeting trend, evolving into a core element of modern cardiology. It sounds like he's really confident that this is the path forward.
I agree with him. And as we've been discussing, it's not just about cardiology. This model could really change the game for so many areas of healthcare, from managing chronic conditions to mental health and well-being.
It's about putting people back in control of their own health, giving them the information they need to make informed choices, and creating a healthcare system that's more responsive, efficient, and ultimately more focused on the individual.
That's a powerful vision, and definitely one worth working towards.
Well, this has been a truly eye-opening conversation. I've learned so much, and I'm feeling really optimistic about the future of healthcare. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us today.
It's been a pleasure talking with you.
And all of you listening out there, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you see home monitoring changing your own healthcare journey in the years to come? What new possibilities does it open up for you? We encourage you to keep exploring this topic, talk to your doctor, and embrace the exciting possibilities ahead. The future of healthcare is in all of our hands, and it's a future we can shape together.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.